Some planes just barely took off. Others, they probably shouldn't have flown at all. Today, we're counting down 5 aircraft so strange, so poorly designed, and so wildly ambitious, it's a miracle they ever left the ground. I'm Bill, and this is Buffalo Air Park. Let's dive in. I've always been fascinated by aviation's weirdest ideas, those one-off experiments or fever-dreamed prototypes that somehow made it off the drawing board and into the sky. In this video, we're taking a look at 5 aircraft that flew, not because they were great, but because someone dared to believe they could. Let's kick things off with a flying platform so odd it looks like something out of a science fiction movie from the 1950s. Number 5. Hiller ZZ-1 Pawnee, the flying manhole cover. The Hiller ZZ-1 Pawnee looked like what you'd get if someone tried to build a hovercraft using a manhole cover and a lawn chair. Developed in the 1950s for the US Army, the idea was simple: give soldiers a personal flying platform that could hover, move in any direction, and land vertically. It used 2 ducted fans to lift a single pilot straight into the air, and in theory, it could be used for reconnaissance, resupply, or even battlefield movement. But here's the thing, it had no walls, no real safety gear, and zero margin for error. The pilot stood on top of the fans, trusting the machine not to tip, stall, or flip him like a pancake. The Pawnee did fly just a few feet off the ground, but stability was a nightmare. Turns out, trying to balance on a pair of spinning fans is exactly as bad an idea as it sounds. The Army quickly realized this wasn't the future of personal flight, it was a lawsuit waiting to happen. Still, it earns its place here because it technically worked, just not for long. Number 4. LTV XC-142, the tilt wing that couldn't. Now, if the Hiller Pawnee was weird and wobbly, the LTV XC-142 was bold and ambitious, too ambitious. Picture this. A troop transport aircraft that could take off like a helicopter, fly like a plane, and land vertically in tight combat zones. Sounds incredible, right? Well, it was also incredibly complicated. Developed in the 1960s by Ling Temco Vought, the XC-142 featured a massive tilt wing that rotated the entire wing and its 4 engines, upward for vertical lift. It looked like something from the Thunderbirds TV show. Yeah, it flew. Actually, it flew a lot, over 400 test flights. But with those test flights came problems, lots of them. Gearboxes failed, the tail would shake violently during transitions, pilots reported serious control issues mid-flight, and let's not even talk about the noise. One pilot described it as flying a blender full of bricks. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but not by much. In the end, the military walked away, and the project was grounded for good. Still, you have to admire the ambition. It aimed for the skies, but it brought a whole lot of turbulence with it. Number 3. McDonnell XF-85 Goblin, the bomber's pocket fighter. Picture this, you're piloting a giant Cold War bomber flying deep into enemy territory. Suddenly, enemy fighters appear. What do? Well, if it were up to McDonnell in the late 1940s, you'd launch a fighter from your bomb bay. Enter the XF-85 Goblin. It was designed to be a parasite fighter, a tiny jet-powered aircraft that lived inside the belly of a B-36 bomber. When threats showed up, the bomber would pop the hatch, drop the Goblin like a mechanical pigeon, and the little guy would dart around defending the mothership. Sounds like a Marvel movie, right? The reality was a bit more chaotic. The Goblin had no landing gear, none. It was meant to hook back onto the bomber mid-air using a retractable trapeze. Problem was, docking with a moving bomber in turbulent skies is like trying to plug in a phone charger while riding a bull. Test flights were rough. The Goblin flew decently, but reattaching to the bomber proved almost impossible. On one flight, the test pilot had to emergency land in the desert without landing gear by skidding across the sand. Eventually, the Air Force realized in-flight docking was more dangerous than enemy fighters. The Goblin never made it past the prototype stage, but for a while, the skies almost had a jet-powered yo-yo. Number 2. Edgley Optica, the bubble-eyed beauty. At first glance, the Edgley Optica looked like something out of a science fiction movie, a bug-eyed observation aircraft with a giant ducted fan where a normal nose should be. Designed in the late 1970s in the UK, it was pitched as a low-cost alternative to helicopters for things like wildlife surveys, traffic patrols, and law enforcement, and honestly, it had some promise. The The Optica was whisper quiet, super stable, and had a massive bubble canopy offering panoramic views. Pilots loved the visibility. It was like flying a giant fishbowl. The slow cruising speed made it ideal for observation, and the aircraft could stay airborne for hours. But for all its clever design, the Optica never really caught on. There were issues with build quality, funding ran dry, and a tragic accident in 1985, caused by a mechanical failure, led to a crash that killed 2 people. The project stalled, production stopped, and the Optica faded into obscurity, though a few still survive in museums and in the hearts of aviation oddball fans. It flew, it worked, but in the end, it was just too strange, too slow, and too soon. Number 1. Caproni CA60 Noviplano, the Flying Venetian Blind. And now we arrive at our final aircraft, the crown jewel of questionable aeronautics, the Caproni CA60 Noviplano. This monster took the idea of more wings equals more lift to absurd new heights. Built in 1921 by Italian designer Gianni Caproni, the Noviplano was a flying boat with 9 wings, yes 9, stacked in 3 triplane sections. It looked like someone tried to build a cathedral out of airplane parts, or maybe a giant Venetian blind that escaped from a hardware store. Either way, it was hard to miss. Caproni's dream was to build a transatlantic passenger plane capable of carrying 100 people across the ocean, but dreams can be heavy, especially when they weigh over 55,000 pounds and have the aerodynamic profile of a bookshelf. The Noviplano did manage to get airborne once. It lifted off from Lake Maggiore, flew about 60 feet high for a brief, glorious moment, and then promptly nosedived into the water, shattering on impact. Miraculously, the pilot survived. The plane, however, was a total loss. Caproni planned to rebuild it, but funding dried up, and the dream sank with it. It was an engineering spectacle, a flying experiment, and possibly one of the most overwinged aircraft ever built. It flew, briefly, but history remembers it more for the splash than the flight. Aviation history is full of innovation, but also full of, let's say, enthusiastic misfires. These 5 aircraft may not have changed the world, but they sure made it more interesting. If you enjoyed this flight through aviation's weird side, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your favorite oddball aircraft, or one you think that should have made the list. And hey, this video is just one of many, so if you're new here, check out my other deep dives into forgotten flying machines, legendary pilots, and experimental designs that defied expectations or physics.